SEAL team trapped in a minefield, she took the first step. The desert air shimmered with heat as Lieutenant Sarah Chen adjusted her night vision goggles, scanning the rocky terrain ahead. Her SEAL team had been moving through the mountains of Afghanistan for 18 hours straight, pursuing high-value targets who had crossed into this remote region. What started as a routine reconnaissance mission was about to become a nightmare that would test every ounce of their training and courage. Chen led Alpha Team, consisting of 6 elite Navy SEALs who had served together for 3 years. Behind her, Petty Officer Rodriguez checked his ammunition count, while Sergeant Martinez monitored their communications equipment. The team moved with the silent precision that had made them legendary among Special Forces units worldwide. Their target was a compound suspected of housing terrorist leaders who had been orchestrating attacks against coalition forces. The intelligence reports had been clear about the location, but they had failed to mention one crucial detail that would change everything. As Chen raised her hand to signal a halt, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Half buried in the sandy soil, barely visible in the moonlight, was the distinctive outline of an anti-personnel mine. Her heart pounded as she realized they had walked directly into an active minefield. The discovery sent a chill through the entire team. Rodriguez froze mid-step, his foot hovering inches above what could be another explosive device. Martinez slowly turned his head, his eyes wide with the understanding of their predicament. They were trapped in a web of death, with mines potentially scattered throughout the area they had just traversed and the path ahead completely unknown. Chen's mind raced as she assessed their situation. Moving forward was impossible without proper mine detection equipment, which they didn't have. Retreating meant retracing their steps through terrain they now knew was booby-trapped. Calling for immediate extraction would take hours, and their position was compromised. The enemy compound was less than 2 miles away, and any helicopter activity would alert the targets to their presence. The team's radio crackled with static as their commanding officer tried to establish contact. Chen knew that maintaining radio silence was crucial to their mission's success, but their current situation demanded immediate communication with headquarters. She made the difficult decision to break protocol and report their status, knowing it could jeopardize the entire operation. Her voice was steady despite the gravity of their situation as she whispered into her headset. The response from headquarters was immediate but not encouraging. The nearest explosive ordnance disposal team was 8 hours away, and extraction helicopters were engaged in another operation across the region. They were essentially on their own until dawn, trapped in a deadly maze with limited options. Rodriguez, the team's demolitions expert, carefully examined the mine at Chen's feet. His expertise told him they were dealing with Soviet-era PMN-2 mines, notorious for their sensitivity and devastating effects. These devices were designed to maim rather than kill, creating wounded soldiers who would burden enemy resources. The knowledge that one wrong step could result in losing a limb or worse weighed heavily on every team member. Martinez discovered additional mines as he slowly swept the immediate area with his knife, probing the ground inch by inch. The pattern of placement suggested they had wandered into a defensive perimeter around the terrorist compound. The enemy had been expecting visitors and had prepared accordingly. Each mine was strategically positioned to channel intruders into killing zones or force them to take longer, more dangerous routes. As the hours passed, Chen made a decision that would define her leadership and change the course of their mission. She had noticed a narrow goat path winding down the mountainside, barely visible in the darkness. The path appeared to skirt the edge of the minefield, but reaching it would require crossing 30 feet of potentially mine-laden ground. Someone would have to take the first step, literally putting their life on the line for the team's survival. The weight of command pressed heavily on Chen's shoulders as she considered their options. Every SEAL was trained to accept dangerous missions, but asking someone to walk through a minefield went beyond normal operational risks. She could order one of her team members to attempt the crossing, but the thought of sending someone else into certain danger while she remained safely behind was unacceptable to her moral code. Her teammates watched as she methodically checked her equipment, understanding what she was preparing to do. Rodriguez started to protest, offering to take the risk himself, but Chen's expression silenced him. Martinez began calculating distances and angles, trying to determine the safest approach to the goat path. The team's medic, Petty Officer Johnson, quietly prepared his emergency medical supplies, knowing that any mistake would require immediate trauma care. The terrorist compound remained quiet in the distance, its occupants unaware that their defensive measures had trapped a SEAL team in a deadly predicament. Chen knew that their mission objectives were now secondary to survival. Getting her team home safely had become the primary goal, even if it meant abandoning their original targets. As she prepared to take the first step into the unknown, Chen reflected on her years of training and the oath she had taken to never leave a fallen comrade behind. Now she faced the possibility of becoming a casualty herself, but her determination to save her team overrode her personal fears. The desert silence was broken only by the distant call of night birds and the barely audible breathing of 5 SEALs, who were about to witness an extraordinary act of courage. Her boot touched the sandy ground as she began the most dangerous walk of her military career. Each step was calculated and deliberate, her entire focus concentrated on the few feet of terrain directly in front of her. Behind her, the team held their breath, knowing that their survival depended on one woman's courage and the narrow path she was carving through a field of death. SEAL team trapped in a minefield. She took the first step. Chen's first step into the minefield felt like an eternity. The soft sand beneath her boot compressed slightly, and she held her breath waiting for the click that would signal her death. Nothing happened. She exhaled slowly, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Behind her, Rodriguez whispered a prayer in Spanish while Martinez gripped his rifle so tightly, his knuckles turned white. The moonlight cast eerie shadows across the desert floor, making every rock and depression look like a potential explosive device. Chen had developed a systematic approach to her movement, using her knife to probe the ground ahead while distributing her weight carefully with each step. The process was agonizingly slow, but speed would only guarantee disaster in this situation. Her second step revealed another mine, this one partially exposed by years of wind erosion. The metallic disc gleamed dully in the starlight, its pressure plate clearly visible. Chen marked its location with a small stone and adjusted her path slightly to the left. She was beginning to understand the pattern of the minefield's layout, recognizing that the mines were placed in a grid formation, with gaps just wide enough to allow animals to pass through safely. Johnson, the team medic, watched Chen's progress through his rifle scope, ready to provide covering fire if the situation deteriorated further. His medical training made him acutely aware of the injuries that landmines inflicted, and he had already calculated the blood loss and trauma procedures he would need to implement if Chen triggered a device. The thought made his stomach churn, but he maintained his professional composure. 20 feet into her crossing, Chen encountered her first major obstacle. A cluster of 3 mines blocked the direct path to the goat trail, forcing her to find an alternative route. She spent precious minutes studying the ground, looking for any sign of disturbed earth or metallic reflections that would indicate more explosives. The delay gave the enemy compound time to potentially discover their presence, but rushing would be suicide. Rodriguez had been counting Chen's steps and timing her progress. At her current pace, it would take another hour to reach the goat path, assuming she encountered no additional obstacles. The team's mission window was rapidly closing, and their extraction timeline was becoming increasingly compromised. He quietly updated Martinez on their situation, using hand signals to avoid any radio transmissions that might be intercepted. The desert began to show signs of approaching dawn, with the eastern horizon displaying the faintest hint of light. Chen knew that daylight would make their position visible to enemy sentries, but it would also allow her to see the minefield more clearly. The trade-off was difficult to calculate, but she pressed forward, trusting her instincts and training to guide her through the remaining danger zone. Martinez had been studying the terrorist compound through his binoculars, noting the movement patterns of guards and the layout of defensive positions. He realized that their original infiltration plan was now impossible, but he began formulating alternative approaches that might salvage some aspects of their mission. The intelligence value of their observations, even from this compromised position, could still prove valuable to future operations. Chen's progress had attracted the attention of nocturnal wildlife in the area. A family of desert foxes watched her movement with curious eyes, their natural ability to navigate the minefield safely serving as an unexpected guide. She noticed that the animals followed specific paths, avoiding certain areas entirely. Their instinctual knowledge of safe passage provided her with additional confidence in her route selection. The physical strain of maintaining perfect balance and control for over an hour was beginning to affect Chen's performance. Her legs trembled slightly from the constant tension, and sweat stung her eyes despite the cool night air. She forced herself to take a brief rest, kneeling carefully on ground she had already verified as safe. While her team maintained their vigilant watch, Johnson spotted movement near the compound and alerted the team through subtle hand signals. A guard had emerged from the main building and was conducting a perimeter check with a flashlight. The beam swept across the landscape randomly, but it was moving in their general direction. Chen would need to complete her crossing quickly if they were going to avoid detection. The pressure of time constraints conflicted with the need for careful movement, creating an almost unbearable tension within the team. Chen understood the implications but refused to compromise safety for speed. She continued her methodical advance, trusting that her teammates would handle any security threats that might emerge from the compound. Rodriguez made a difficult decision and began following Chen's exact path through the minefield. His expertise with explosives gave him confidence in her route-finding abilities, and having 2 team members across the danger zone would provide more options for the remaining SEALs. Martinez initially tried to stop him, but Rodriguez was already committed to his course of action. The sight of Rodriguez entering the minefield behind her both encouraged and worried Chen. She now had additional responsibility for his safety, but she also had backup if something went wrong. They moved in single file, maintaining enough distance to avoid a chain reaction if either of them triggered an explosive device. Their progress accelerated slightly as Rodriguez confirmed the safety of Chen's chosen path. His presence allowed her to focus more on the terrain ahead while he watched for any signs she might have missed behind them. The 2 SEALs developed a rhythm of movement that balanced speed with caution, gradually closing the distance to their objective. The eastern sky continued to brighten, and Chen could now see the goat path clearly. It was narrower than she had hoped, carved into the mountainside by generations of animals seeking water in the valley below. The path would provide them with an escape route, but it would also expose them to observation from the compound if they weren't careful about their timing and movement. As Chen approached the final 10 feet of the minefield, she encountered the most dangerous section yet. The mines were more densely packed near the perimeter, creating a final barrier designed to stop anyone who had successfully navigated the outer defenses. Each step required even more careful consideration, and the margin for error had essentially disappeared. Behind her, Rodriguez held his position, ready to assist or retreat depending on what Chen discovered ahead. SEAL team trapped in a minefield, she took the first step. The final approach to the goat path proved to be the most treacherous section of the entire crossing. Chen discovered that the terrorists had concentrated their defensive measures precisely where animals would naturally exit the minefield, creating a killing zone designed to eliminate anyone who had successfully navigated the outer perimeter. The density of mines in this area was nearly double what she had encountered before. Chen's knife probe struck metal just inches from her intended footstep, revealing another PMN-2 mine almost perfectly concealed beneath a thin layer of sand and small rocks. The device had been positioned to catch anyone who thought they had successfully cleared the danger zone. She carefully marked its location and began searching for an alternative path that would bring her safely to the rocky ledge above. Rodriguez maintained his position 20 feet behind, watching Chen's slow progress while keeping one eye on the compound in the distance. The guard's flashlight had disappeared, but that could mean either that the sentry had returned to the building or that he was now patrolling in darkness. Either scenario presented potential complications for their escape plan. Back at the team's original position, Martinez had taken charge of the remaining 3 SEALs. Johnson continued to provide overwatch with his rifle, while the other 2 team members prepared for a rapid movement once Chen and Rodriguez established a safe corridor. Martinez calculated that they would need at least 30 minutes to move everyone across the minefield, assuming no complications arose. The approaching dawn created new challenges for Chen's navigation. While the increased light helped her identify potential threats, it also meant that their movements would soon become visible to enemy observation posts. She could see guard towers on the compound's perimeter that had been invisible in the darkness, and the thought of being caught in the open during daylight spurred her to move more aggressively. Chen's experience as a combat engineer proved invaluable as she studied the mine placement patterns. She realized that the terrorists had used a Soviet-era defensive manual, placing the explosives according to standard military doctrine. This knowledge allowed her to predict where additional mines might be located and plan her route more effectively. The goat path was now only 8 feet away, but those 8 feet contained at least 4 confirmed mines and potentially several more hidden devices. Chen spent precious minutes planning her approach, knowing that a mistake at this point would not only kill her but would also trap Rodriguez. In the middle of the minefield with no safe path forward or backward, Johnson spotted movement in one of the guard towers and immediately signaled the team. A sentry had emerged with binoculars and was scanning the surrounding terrain methodically. The team had perhaps 10 minutes before the guard sweep would reach their position, creating pressure for Chen to complete her crossing before they were discovered. Rodriguez made the decision to begin moving again, following Chen's verified path while she worked on the final approach. His movement would bring him closer to safety, but would also commit the entire team to this escape route. There would be no turning back once he advanced beyond the halfway point of the minefield. Chen discovered a narrow gap between 2 mines that would allow her to reach the base of the goat path. The opening was barely wide enough for her boots, requiring perfect balance and precise foot placement. She would have to stretch across a mine to reach the safe ground, testing her physical capabilities and nerve to their absolute limits. Her first attempt to cross the gap failed when loose rocks shifted under her extended leg, forcing her to abort the movement and return to her previous position. The near miss with disaster reminded her that even experienced operators could make fatal mistakes when pushed beyond their comfort zones. She took a moment to calm her breathing and reassess the situation. Martinez received an update from headquarters through their encrypted communication system. The extraction helicopter was delayed by mechanical problems, extending their isolation by at least 2 additional hours. The team would need to find a secure hiding position and avoid detection until air support became available. Rodriguez had closed the gap to 10 feet behind Chen when she finally managed to cross the narrow opening between the 2 mines. Her landing on the rocky ledge was silent and controlled, demonstrating the physical conditioning and balance that had made her an exceptional special operations soldier. She immediately established a security position and began scanning for threats. The goat path led up the mountainside in a series of switchbacks that would provide concealment from the compound below. Chen could see potential hiding spots among the rocks where the team could wait for extraction. The path also offered multiple escape routes if their position was compromised before the helicopter arrived. Chen secured a climbing rope to a large boulder and dropped the other end back into the minefield for Rodriguez to use during his final approach. The rope would provide him with additional stability and confidence during the most dangerous part of his crossing. She also prepared to provide covering fire if the situation deteriorated quickly. Rodriguez reached the base of Chen's rope and began his careful ascent to the goat path. His movement was smooth and professional, demonstrating the trust he placed in Chen's judgment and the rope anchor she had established. Within minutes, he joined her on the rocky ledge, becoming the second team member to successfully escape the minefield. The 2 SEALs now had to guide the remaining 4 team members across the danger zone before the increasing daylight made their position untenable. Chen began preparing additional rope lines and safety measures, while Rodriguez established communication with Martinez to coordinate the next phase of their evacuation. Martinez had been observing Chen's route and timing her movements, developing a plan for moving the team across in pairs rather than individually. This approach would reduce the total crossing time, but would also increase the risk if someone made a mistake. The decision required careful consideration of their tactical situation and the growing threat of discovery. Johnson volunteered to make the next crossing, reasoning that his medical skills might be needed if someone was injured during the evacuation. His offer was both brave and practical, ensuring that medical support would be available on both sides of the minefield during the most dangerous phase of their escape. The compound showed increased activity as the morning shift of guards began their duties. Chen and Rodriguez could see personnel moving between buildings and vehicles being prepared for departure. Their intelligence mission had provided valuable information about enemy capabilities and routines, even though their original objectives had been compromised by the minefield encounter. Chen established a timeline for the remaining evacuations, calculating that they had approximately 45 minutes before full daylight, would make their movements clearly visible to enemy observers. Each crossing would need to be completed in less than 10 minutes to maintain their operational security and ensure the team's survival. SEAL team trapped in a minefield. She took the first step. Johnson began his crossing with the confidence of a man who had watched two teammates successfully navigate the deadly terrain before him. His medical training had taught him to remain calm under extreme pressure, and he applied that same mental discipline to each carefully placed step through the minefield. Chen had marked the safe path with small rocks, creating a subtle guide that was invisible from the compound but clear to anyone following her route. The medic's crossing revealed additional challenges that Chen and Rodriguez had not encountered. The increasing daylight exposed previously hidden tripwires connected to secondary explosive devices, creating a more complex obstacle course than they had originally assessed. Johnson's sharp eyes caught the nearly invisible strands of wire, and he carefully traced their connections to identify the triggered devices. Martinez watched through his scope as Johnson methodically worked around the new obstacles, documenting the locations of additional threats for the remaining team members. The discovery of tripwires suggested that the minefield was more sophisticated than a simple anti-personnel barrier, possibly incorporating command-detonated explosives that could be triggered remotely from the compound. Chen established overwatch positions on the goat path, using her rifle scope to monitor both Johnson's progress and the activity around the terrorist compound. She noticed increased radio chatter between the guard towers, indicating that something had caught their attention. The team's presence might have been detected, or the guards might simply be conducting routine communications checks. Rodriguez prepared additional climbing ropes and anchors to speed up the evacuation of the remaining team members. His demolitions expertise allowed him to identify the safest anchor points in the rocky terrain, ensuring that the rope systems would hold under the stress of rapid movement if they needed to accelerate their evacuation. Timeline. Johnson's medical pack snagged on a piece of exposed metal halfway through his crossing, requiring him to stop and carefully free the equipment without triggering any nearby explosives. The delay was frustrating but necessary, as losing their medical supplies would leave the team vulnerable to injuries during the remainder of their mission. The terrorist compound showed signs of preparing for a vehicle convoy, with armed personnel loading equipment and checking weapons. Chen realized that their intelligence observations were providing valuable information about enemy movement patterns and capabilities. Even though their original infiltration mission had been abandoned due to the minefield discovery, Martinez made the difficult decision to begin his own crossing before Johnson had completely cleared the danger zone. The tactical situation demanded faster movement, and Martinez's leadership responsibilities required him to position himself where he could best coordinate the team's actions. His experience as a senior non-commissioned officer gave him the confidence to make this risk assessment. Johnson reached the base of Chen's climbing rope and began his ascent to the goat path, moving with the efficiency of someone who understood the importance of speed in their current situation. His successful crossing meant that 3/4 of the team had now escaped the minefield, leaving only Martinez and the junior team member, Petty Officer Williams, in the danger zone. Williams had been the most nervous about the crossing, being the youngest and least experienced member of the team. However, watching his teammates successfully navigate the minefield had given him confidence in their procedures and his own abilities. He began mental rehearsals of his movement plan, visualizing each step and potential obstacle he would encounter. Chen established communication with their distant headquarters, providing updates on their status and the intelligence they had gathered about the enemy compound. The information about the sophisticated minefield and the convoy preparations would be valuable for future operations in the region. Even if their current mission objectives could not be completed, Martinez's crossing proceeded smoothly until he encountered a section where recent rainfall had washed away some of Chen's path markers. He was forced to reprobe the ground carefully, losing valuable time while the eastern horizon continued to brighten. The delay put additional pressure on Williams, who would be making his crossing in nearly full daylight. Rodriguez monitored the compound's radio frequencies, using his language skills to interpret the Arabic communications between guard posts. He learned that the guards were preparing for a routine patrol of the perimeter, which would bring armed personnel dangerously close to their evacuation route. The team would need to complete their crossing before the patrol began its circuit. Johnson established a casualty collection point on the goat path, preparing medical supplies and evacuation procedures in case Williams encountered difficulties during his crossing. His preparations were both precautionary and prudent, ensuring that the team would be ready to respond quickly to any emergency situation. Chen identified a more direct route that Williams could use for his crossing, taking advantage of the full daylight to spot additional safe areas that had been invisible during the night movement. The new route would reduce his exposure time, but would require him to move across previously untested ground. Martinez successfully reached the climbing rope and joined the majority of his team on the goat path. His leadership presence immediately improved morale and coordination, as the team now had their complete command structure in the safe zone. Williams would be crossing alone, but he would have the full attention and support of 5 experienced teammates. Williams began his movement with steady determination, following the path that had been blazed by his teammates while incorporating the new route modifications that Chen had identified. His youth and physical conditioning allowed him to move more quickly than the others had, but he maintained the careful discipline that the situation demanded. The enemy patrol emerged from the compound and began moving toward the perimeter fence, following a route that would bring them within observation distance of the minefield. Chen calculated that Williams had approximately 15 minutes to complete his crossing before the patrol reached a position where they could spot movement. On the mountainside, Rodriguez prepared contingency plans for dealing with the approaching patrol, identifying potential ambush positions and escape routes if the team was discovered. His options were limited by their position on the narrow goat path, but he was confident that they could defend themselves long enough for extraction if necessary. Williams encountered his first major obstacle when he discovered that one of Chen's markers had been moved by desert wind, leaving him uncertain about the exact location of a known mine. He spent precious minutes reprobing the area, ultimately deciding to take a wider detour that would keep him clear of any potential threats in that section. The terrorist patrol reached the outer edge of the minefield and began setting up observation posts with binoculars and radio equipment. Their professional manner suggested military training rather than typical insurgent operations, indicating that the compound housed more sophisticated opponents than originally assessed in the intelligence briefings. Chen made the decision to provide covering fire if Williams was detected during his final approach to the climbing rope. Her position offered good fields of fire across the minefield, and her marksmanship skills would give Williams the protection he needed to complete his evacuation. The team was committed to ensuring that no one was left behind, regardless of the tactical complications. SEAL team trapped in a minefield. She took the first step. Williams reached the final section of the minefield, just as the enemy patrol established their observation post at the perimeter fence. The timing was dangerously close, but Chen's covering position gave her clear lines of sight to protect him if he was spotted. The young SEAL's movement was smooth and confident, demonstrating how the successful crossings of his teammates had prepared him mentally for this moment. The terrorist patrol began systematic sweeps of the surrounding terrain with their binoculars, following procedures that indicated professional military training. Chen observed their search patterns and realized they were looking for specific signs of infiltration, suggesting that the compound's security had been compromised before, and they were prepared for special operations threats. Rodriguez intercepted radio communications indicating that the convoy departure had been delayed due to security concerns. The patrol leader was reporting possible signs of movement in the outer defensive areas, though they had not yet identified the SEAL team's exact location. The delay would provide additional time for extraction, but also increase the likelihood of discovery. Williams negotiated the dense mine concentration near the goat path with careful precision, using the route modifications that Chen had identified from her elevated position. His crossing time was significantly faster than his teammates had achieved, benefiting from their pathfinding efforts and the improved visibility of daylight conditions. Martinez coordinated with headquarters to finalize extraction procedures. Learning that the helicopter was now airborne and approaching their general area, the aircraft would need precise coordinates and landing zone information to execute a safe pickup under the current threat conditions. The team would need to move to a more suitable extraction point once Williams completed his crossing. Johnson prepared emergency medical procedures in case Williams triggered an explosive device during his final approach. The medic's supplies were organized for rapid response, and he had identified the quickest route back down the goat path if immediate evacuation became necessary. His preparations were thorough and professional, reflecting his commitment to team safety. Chen noticed increased activity around the compound's main building, with personnel carrying communication equipment and setting up what appeared to be command and control systems. The intelligence value of their observations continued to grow, providing insights into enemy capabilities and procedures that would benefit future operations in the region. The enemy patrol leader raised his binoculars toward the mountainside where the SEAL team was positioned, causing Chen to freeze in place to avoid detection. Her camouflage and positioning were excellent, but movement at this distance could still be spotted by experienced observers. She signaled the rest of the team to remain motionless until the threat passed. Williams reached the climbing rope and began his ascent to join his teammates on the goat path. His relief at escaping the minefield was evident, but he maintained operational discipline and immediately took up a security position to watch for threats. The entire team was now safely out of the immediate danger zone and ready to move to their extraction point. Rodriguez identified a helicopter landing zone approximately 1 kilometer up the mountain path, in a natural clearing that would provide adequate space for the aircraft while offering concealment from enemy observation. The location would require a demanding climb, but it was the safest option available, given their current tactical situation. The team began moving along the goat path in single file, maintaining noise discipline and careful spacing to avoid detection. Their movement was deliberate and professional, with each SEAL understanding their role in the tactical formation. Chen led the way using her knowledge of the terrain to select the safest route toward the extraction. Point Martinez received updated intelligence from headquarters indicating that additional enemy forces were moving toward their area of operations. The delayed convoy had apparently triggered a broader security alert, bringing reinforcements that would complicate their extraction timeline. The helicopter crew was aware of the increased threat and was prepared for potential combat during the pickup. Johnson treated minor injuries that several team members had sustained during their crossing of the minefield, including cuts from sharp rocks and strain injuries from the careful movement required in the danger zone. His medical attention ensured that everyone remained mission-capable for the challenging climb ahead. The enemy patrol below began expanding their search area, moving closer to the base of the mountain where the SEAL team had originally been trapped. Their systematic approach suggested they had found evidence of the team's presence, possibly including disturbed sand or equipment marks left during the minefield crossing. Chen identified observation positions along their route that would allow them to monitor enemy activity while moving toward the extraction point. The intelligence gathering continued even during their withdrawal, demonstrating the professional dedication that characterized elite special operations units. Rodriguez established communication with the approaching helicopter, providing detailed information about the landing zone conditions and potential threats in the area. The aircraft crew was experienced in combat extractions and began planning their approach to minimize exposure to enemy fire while maintaining safety margins. For the team pickup, Williams proved his resilience by maintaining pace with the more experienced team members during the demanding climb up the mountain path. His successful navigation of the minefield had increased his confidence and demonstrated his readiness for the challenges of special operations duty. The terrorist compound launched a quick reaction force consisting of armed vehicles and personnel, indicating that they had identified signs of the SEAL team's infiltration attempt. The force was moving toward the base of the mountain, but their lack of specific intelligence about the team's location gave the SEALs a significant advantage in avoiding detection. Martinez coordinated the team's movement to ensure they reached the extraction point before enemy forces could establish blocking positions. His tactical planning took advantage of the terrain features and the enemy's limited knowledge of their exact location to maintain operational security during the withdrawal phase. Chen established overwatch positions at key points along their route, providing security for the team's movement while gathering additional intelligence about enemy response procedures. Her leadership during the minefield crisis had earned the complete trust of her teammates, who followed her guidance without question. The helicopter crew reported visual contact with the SEAL team's position and began their approach to the landing zone. The extraction was entering its final phase, but the increased enemy activity in the area meant that the pickup would need to be executed quickly and efficiently to avoid compromise. Rodriguez prepared the landing zone by clearing obstacles and establishing security positions around the perimeter. His demolitions expertise allowed him to quickly assess the area for potential threats while ensuring that the helicopter would have adequate space for a safe landing and rapid departure. Johnson verified that all team members were physically capable of completing the extraction, checking for injuries or fatigue that might compromise their ability to board the aircraft quickly. His medical assessment confirmed that everyone was mission-ready, despite the stress and physical demands of their escape from the minefield. SEAL team trapped in a minefield. She took the first step. The extraction helicopter appeared over the eastern ridge as the sun fully cleared the horizon, its rotors cutting through the thin mountain air with distinctive military precision. Chen felt a surge of relief as she watched the aircraft approach their position, knowing that her team's ordeal was finally nearing its end. The pilot demonstrated exceptional skill, maneuvering the helicopter through the rocky terrain while maintaining awareness of potential enemy threats. Rodriguez guided the aircraft to their improvised landing zone using standard military hand signals, his movements clear and deliberate despite the rotor wash that kicked up clouds of dust and debris. The helicopter crew consisted of experienced combat veterans who had conducted countless extractions under hostile conditions, and their professionalism was evident in every aspect of their approach. Martinez coordinated the team's boarding sequence, ensuring that the most critically needed personnel would be first to safety while maintaining security around the landing zone perimeter. His tactical experience guided the process, with each SEAL understanding their specific role in the extraction without requiring detailed verbal instructions. The enemy quick reaction force had reached the base of the mountain and was beginning to establish blocking positions along the lower trails. Their response time had been impressive, but their lack of specific intelligence about the SEAL team's location prevented them from mounting an effective pursuit. Chen could see their vehicles through her rifle scope, noting their professional organization and equipment. Johnson conducted final medical checks on each team member before they boarded the helicopter, ensuring that no one had sustained injuries that might require immediate attention during flight. His thoroughness reflected the high standards of care that characterize special operations medical personnel, prioritizing team safety even during extraction operations. Williams had proven himself during the minefield crossing and subsequent withdrawal, demonstrating the courage and competence that would serve him well in future special operations missions. His teammates' respect for his performance was evident, and Chen made mental notes to include his exceptional conduct in her after-action reports. The helicopter crew chief confirmed that the aircraft was ready for immediate departure, with fuel and defensive systems optimized for rapid egress from the potentially hostile area. The aircraft's defensive capabilities included electronic countermeasures and door-mounted weapon systems that would provide protection during their withdrawal from enemy territory. Chen was the last SEAL to board the helicopter, maintaining her command responsibilities until every team member was safely aboard the aircraft. Her leadership during the minefield crisis had saved lives and demonstrated the kind of decision-making ability that characterized the finest military officers. The team's survival was a direct result of her courage and tactical competence. Rodriguez secured the team's equipment and weapons for flight, ensuring that sensitive items were properly safeguarded while preparing for potential defensive action if they encountered enemy aircraft or ground-based threats. His attention to detail reflected the professional standards that made special operations teams so effective in challenging environments. The helicopter lifted off from the mountain landing zone and immediately began evasive maneuvers to avoid potential enemy fire from the valley below. The pilot's skill was evident as he used the terrain features to mask their departure route while maintaining the speed necessary to clear the threat area quickly. Martinez coordinated with headquarters to provide initial reports on their mission status and the intelligence information they had gathered during their infiltration attempt. Even though their primary objectives had not been achieved, the information about enemy capabilities and defensive measures would prove valuable for future operations in the region. Johnson monitored each team member for signs of delayed stress, reactions, or injuries that might have been overlooked during the extraction process. His medical training included psychological as well as physical assessment skills, ensuring that the team remained mission-capable for future operations. The terrorist compound responded to the helicopter departure by launching their own aircraft, but the SEAL team's helicopter had already gained sufficient altitude and distance to avoid interception. The enemy's reaction confirmed the intelligence value of the compound and validated the importance of the original mission objectives. Chen conducted preliminary debriefing discussions with her team during the flight, documenting key lessons learned and identifying areas where their procedures could be improved for future missions. Her analytical approach to the experience demonstrated the continuous learning mindset that characterized elite military units. Rodriguez calculated that the minefield contained approximately 50 explosive devices arranged in a defensive pattern that covered nearly 2 acres of terrain. His assessment would be included in intelligence reports that would help other special operations teams avoid similar situations in future missions. Williams reflected on his first major special operations mission, recognizing how much he had learned from observing his experienced teammates under extreme pressure. The minefield crossing had been a transformative experience that would influence his approach to future challenges in his military career. The helicopter crew provided updates on friendly forces in the area, confirming that coalition units were aware of their extraction and were prepared to provide additional support if needed. The coordination between different military units demonstrated the effectiveness of joint operations procedures. Martinez evaluated the mission's overall success, recognizing that while their primary infiltration objectives had not been achieved, the team had survived an extremely dangerous situation and had gathered valuable intelligence about enemy capabilities. Military success was often measured by adaptation to unexpected circumstances rather than simple achievement of original goals. Chen began planning her formal after-action report, focusing on the decision-making process that had led to their successful escape from the minefield. Her analysis would contribute to special operations training programs and would help prepare future leaders for similar crisis situations. The helicopter reached friendly airspace and began its approach to the forward operating base, where the SEAL team would conduct detailed debriefings and prepare for their next mission assignment. The extraction had been successful, and every team member had returned safely despite facing one of the most dangerous situations in special operations warfare. Johnson prepared medical reports documenting the physical and psychological stresses encountered during the mission, contributing to research that would improve training programs and equipment development for future special operations personnel. His documentation would help save lives in future missions. Rodriguez secured all sensitive equipment and prepared for the detailed intelligence debriefings that would follow their return to base. The information they had gathered about enemy defensive procedures and capabilities would be analyzed by specialists who would use it to plan future operations in the region. The SEAL team's successful escape from the minefield had demonstrated the importance of individual courage, team cohesion, and professional competence under extreme pressure. Chen's decision to take the first step had saved her team's lives and had provided a powerful example of leadership that would inspire other special operations personnel for years to come. Their story would become part of the legacy of courage that defined the Navy SEALs and their commitment to bringing every teammate home safely.